Growing bolder, what's next?
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Growing Boulder's What's Next. I'm Bill Shafer. I'll be with you for the next little while. We've got some really cool things to talk about. But first, if you've got a little bit, just to... Well, it tastes great. And you know what? Looks great, too. Would this make a nice little stocking stuffer for you or yours this holiday season? Check out growingboulder.com/shop for all these really cool, inspirational Growing Boulder trinkets that will turn any holiday into a big smile and a big hug to let somebody know that you really care about them. Now, look, today, right in the throes of the holiday season, what an unusual holiday season this is. And we were thinking that because of the pandemic, nothing is normal anymore. So the Growing Bolder way of looking at things is, how do we look at something and make the best of it? And I started thinking one of the biggest parts of the holidays that we're really missing out on are the holiday movies, the blockbuster films that come out this time of year, going to the theater with family, meeting friends there, just the whole social aspect of being surrounded by people, which we haven't been. So what are we doing instead, right? All of us are finding ourselves sitting on the couch and watching Hallmark holiday movies, which are great, don't get me wrong, but they're Hallmark holiday movies. And there's a generation of people out there that's what holiday movies are to them. You know, there's Lacey Chabert and Candace Cameron Bure, and if you know those names like me, you're watching too many Hallmark holiday movies. And it started me thinking, why is it that we know so few Christmas movies? It's a Wonderful Life is on every year, Miracle on 34th Street. There's the same handful that we watch all the time. I bet there are some fantastic films that have been out over the years that maybe haven't gotten the publicity, or maybe we don't recognize the names, or maybe some of the performers or performances were a little bit different and they haven't made mainstream attention. Maybe this is the year to look back and find some gems from yesterday that we can all watch together and experience maybe for the first time. So, deep into my Growing Bolder bag of tricks, I pulled out the name of a guy who I just wish I was him. I envy him, admire him. He's interesting, knowledgeable, passionate, and knows more about older films than almost anybody in the country. His name is Lou Sabini. He's a film historian. He's an author, and he is joining us here on What's Next this morning so we can talk about holiday films. Lou, are you there?
For having me.
How's everything? Are you Stamford, Connecticut, right?
Yep, I'm from Stamford, Connecticut, born and raised.
Well, happy holidays to you. How's everything going up there?
Everything's terrific. We're still living our lives. We're watching a lot of movies, obviously, going for walks and keeping safe, distancing, and keeping our masks on. Of course, I'm not wearing them for today, but...
One of the really cool things about Lou and his wife, Sue, is that they don't just watch the old movies. They kind of recreate the environment in a way by you've got a mini theater in your home.
Yeah. Yep, that's right. We have a theater. We use it quite often, and we have friends over occasionally to watch movies. I think this is the room we pretty much live in most of our lives. In the 40
and you've got everything from the old 16 millimeter projector, right?
Yeah, I have over 1,000 titles on 16 millimeter, and we also have a video projector, and we watch movies on video and also on 16 millimeter. We have a projection booth. We have a switch off system, so both projectors can be utilized. You have a so you could change reels and not have an interruption.
Now, just so people know a little bit about you, Lou, I think isn't your main passion, you were interested in these amazing pre-code films from the 20s and 30s, and you were also just really into Laurel and Hardy and film noir, and so it's a lot of the films from the golden age of Hollywood.
That's right. I started, as very young. I guess the first movie I ever saw in the movie theater was Dance With Me, Henry, in 1956. It was Abbott and Costello's last film. And then shortly after that, I saw Laurel and Hardy. I discovered them on television. And in 1961, Jack McCabe, who was an author, Professor McCabe, wrote a book called Mr. Laurel and Mr. Hardy. And it said at the ending that Stan Laurel lives in Santa Monica, California. So I wrote to him, and I got these letters back, and I became pen pals with Stan. And I eventually spoke to him on the telephone Christmas week of 1964. And that was only 2 months before he passed away.
He answered your letters, letters from a little kid who just got his address and sent them a note?
Yeah, personally. And I even have on my mantle over there, I have a couple of autographs sitting on the mantle from Stan.
So Lou, what a great way to start that. Well, I do want to plug one other thing. I got to meet Lou online on Facebook. Boy, there are so many groups and clubs and pages out there, and some of them are. If you have any interest in early films, you must go to My Reel Life, REEL. Great conversations, great discussions, great insight, great posts. And Lou, you've been doing that page for years now.
Yes, I've been doing it now for 8 years, I believe. Yeah, 8 years. It's been quite a while. It's been a long haul, and we've got a lot of very interesting people, very knowledgeable. I can't get over how much these people know. I thought I knew a lot, but they put me to shame.
It's great because relatives of many of our favorite entertainers are there, if not the entertainer themselves, and it's a really great group of like-minded people who really appreciate these films. Now, you mentioned an affection and a passion for Laurel and Hardy. I love Laurel and Hardy myself. Isn't it interesting how most of the classic Christmas films, you would almost think that they were tailor-made for comedy groups or comedy teams or comedians, but there aren't that many well-known holiday films by comedians.
No. Actually, the only one that I could think of right off the top of my head is the one I'm right behind me here. That it was retitled The March of the Wooden Soldiers because in 1961, Walt Disney came out with a version called Babes in Toyland. The original title was indeed Babes in Toyland. It was released in 1934, produced by Hal Roach Studios and Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, and it starred Laurel and Hardy. And it's become an annual classic on television.
Yeah, that's still one that people can see out there that hopefully you're familiar with. In fact, I think we've got a little bit of the trailer from Babes in Toyland.
Great.
Very, very cool. You just get that just the music itself and those cool wooden soldiers take you back. What stands out about that movie for you?
Well, I mean, first of all, the great Victor Herbert story. Well, actually, it was a story written by, they say Stan Laurel did a lot of it. Hal Roach had written an original story for it after seeing the play in Manhattan. And Laurel did not approve of it, so Stan rewrote it, and this is what we have today. It did very well financially, and it also did very well critically. The critics liked it, and the critics were people who really didn't care for Laurel and Hardy. They thought that they were low-grade film comedians, but of course they weren't. A funny story about this movie. Years ago, I was invited to a Sons of the Desert event. The Sons of the Desert is the Laurel and Hardy Society. And it was started by Jack McCabe and a few other people, Al Kilgore and John Municino and Chuck McCann. And I was invited to a function there. And they were honoring comedian Bill Murray. And I was asked to get up and speak for a little bit. And I sat down. And someone had pointed that Felix Knight, who played Tom Tom in Babes in Toyland, was there having dinner. So I walked over to him and I introduced myself, and we were talking about Babes in Toyland. And he said, "Well, you know, this wasn't my first movie. I had made another movie before that." And I said, "Yeah, it was called Down to the Last Yacht, and it starred actress Sidney Fox and Phil Harris." And he said, "You remember that movie? You've seen it?" And I said, "Yeah." He couldn't get over that, but he was a sweetheart of a guy, and he told me that he was selected for the role of Tom Tom because Hal Roach liked the way he sang, and also because he was the prettiest of all the leading men they auditioned.
Wow. Awesome stuff. And Lou, just so you know, your story is being heard by Jane Elke, who's joining us today from Brooklyn. Patricia Bishop is here from Texas. We love seeing her every single week. And Gabrielle Anklam from Germany is here watching our little broadcast today. And folks, if you're out there, go ahead and type in what your favorite holiday movie is, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about that too, but let us know what your favorite is as well. And I know, Lou, another one that you wanted us to mention is a Barbara Stanwyck, Fred McMurray film, of all people.
Yes. As a matter of fact, this movie, I first found out about this movie. It's called Remember the Night. And it's written by the great Preston Sturges, who's one of my favorite directors. He later on did movies like Hail the Conquering Hero, Sullivan's Travels, and another Christmas film called The Miracle of Morgan's Creek. But originally, he wanted this to be a drama, and the title of it was Beyond These Tears. And it turned out he wrote it as a beautiful romantic comedy instead. And this was before Sturges became a director. So Mitchell Leisen was the director of the film. Now, I first heard about Remember the Night in 1976 when film historian William K. Everson wrote the book Love in the Film. And it was a film that I had to see. And the only way I was able to see it was that I acquired a 16 millimeter print of it. And this is my personal all-time favorite Christmas movie. It's a movie that everybody has got to see. In my opinion, it's even more effective than It's a Wonderful Life, which again is one of my favorite Christmas classics.
All right, well, if it's one of your favorites, I say we take a short look at the trailer from the movie Remember the Night.
Okay.
Well, I think a 5-minute recess would be sufficient for her to recover. I am undoubtedly responsible for having made a...
Please, Jack.
Your Honor,
You must be a parent. This young woman has been made hysterical by what's going on here.
This is during which she is not responsible for what she says.
I'm all right. I just want to plead guilty.
If Your Honor would kindly grant a 5-minute recess.
My child, why do you want to plead guilty?
Because I am guilty. And when you make a mistake, you've got to pay for it.
Oh, those films are so sentimental, and you can almost feel yourself tearing up. You know, Barbara Stanwyck is so good.
And I'll tell you, she looks her best in this movie. The gowns by Edith Head. She looks absolutely stunning. And, everybody remembers Stanwyck and Fred McMurray in Double Indemnity, which came out 4 years later, directed by Billy Wilder, which is a dark film noir. I mean, what a difference seeing the two films side by side. That would make a great double feature, I would say.
And there, another film that everybody thinks of, Jimmy Stewart. Obviously, It's a Wonderful Life, but he made a film years earlier as well called Shop Around the Corner. That's quirkier and a whole lot different, but again, definitely worth a watch.
Yeah, it was based on a play called Perfumery by Nicholas Laszlo. And it's directed by the great Ernst Lubitsch. And Lubitsch and Stewart claimed that this was their favorite film. And it takes place in Budapest. And Frank Morgan stars in it, along with Margaret Sullivan, who was the first wife of Henry Fonda. And after they divorced, Jimmy Stewart and Margaret Sullivan became very friendly. And I would say that Margaret Sullivan was very instrumental in getting James Stewart his start in movies because he was under contract to MGM, but it seemed like MGM didn't know what to do with Jimmy Stewart. They were putting him in secondary roles, like in movies like The Last Gangster and Wife versus Secretary, which was a very minor role, which starred Clark Gable, Myrna Loy, Jean Harlow. So they didn't know what to do with him. So he was loaned out to Universal, and he got the lead role in Next Time We Love, opposite Margaret Sullivan. And 2 years later, he was on loan again with Frank Capra for You Can't Take It With You, which won the Best Picture title of 1938, and then again in 39 in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. So it seems like the other directors, George Marshall, Destry Rides Again, they knew what to do with Stewart. So it took MGM a little time before they knew exactly what type of character Jimmy Stewart should be playing in movies. I mean, he was in some awful movies like The Ice Follies of 1939. I mean, just awful. But then they finally, put him in The Philadelphia Story, and he won the Best Actor Oscar, which in my opinion was a consolation prize because he should have won it the previous year for Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. But
well, let's take it. I'm curious now. Let's take a quick look at a bit of the trailer from Shop Around the Corner.
Oh, this is a great trailer too.
My first sales lady is Clara Novak, played by the very charming Margaret Sullivan. She argues, too.
Listen, I sold as much goods yesterday as anybody else in the shop. 95 Pengo 50 isn't bad for a rainy Monday 3 weeks before Christmas. Did you tell that to Mr. Matichek?
Yes, I did.
And what did he say?
He said tell her not to come in that blouse anymore.
Tell him I won't.
I will.
Now I want you to take a look at Mr. Perovich, played by Felix Bressart. He was one of the Russian comrades in Ninochka. He's the typical sales clerk who is always 10 minutes early.
Perovich, do you mind if I ask you a personal question?
No, go ahead.
It's very confidential.
Yeah, sure.
Suppose a fella like me wants to get married.
Well, that's wonderful. That's the best thing that could happen to you. Who's the girl?
Oh, wait a minute. What did I say? I said suppose. I said a fella like me. I didn't say me. Now, look, how much does it cost you to live? You and Mrs. Perovich, leaving out the children.
Oh, why fool yourself?
It's incredible, the rat-a-tat dialogue or just the charm of Jimmy Stewart. You can feel it there. And Lou, I got to bring this one thing up because I read it on your page in My Real Life. Is it true that Jimmy Stewart entered World War II as a pilot? He was and he wanted to see combat and flew many missions. And I read on your page that somebody posted that he had PTSD so bad that it wasn't really until It's a Wonderful Life in 1946 that he started to work through that. And they claim that a lot of the angst that you saw in the movie as his life dissolved was real.
Yeah, that's true. It's a Wonderful Life is very, very curious because it mixes the pre-World War II Jimmy Stewart. He's kind of like the country bumpkin, the naive type of nice guy. And then by the ending of the movie, he becomes a cynical, hard-boiled, really downbeat character that he played in movies in the 50s, in the post-war years. One thing I wanted to say about The Shop Around the Corner, it was remade twice, once in 1948 with Dennis Morgan and Judy Garland as a musical called In the Good Old Summertime, and then again in 1998 with Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks as You've Got Mail. But neither one of them can compare with this 1940 version of The Shop Around the Corner. I totally...
Do you feel like, Lou, I'm sorry, do you feel that these films, do they hold water with if people did take the time to go back and look up those films, would they still be interested, or did you have to have, a special kind of eye?
Absolutely. And another thing I wanted to tell you about The Shop Around the Corner and Remember the Night. Remember the Night was released on January 9th, 1940. And The Shop Around the Corner was released 3 days later. So you have two classic Christmas movies that came out within a few days of one another.
And interesting, Lou, they came out after Christmas.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they were previewed before that, obviously. I mean, the release date was, they were playing in other major cities, probably around the Christmas holidays.
In the 40s, did they look forward to the Christmas season for blockbuster releases like we did up until this year?
Absolutely. Yeah. Every year they would look forward to. I mean, sometimes you would have these curiosities like Miracle on 34th Street, which was released in the summertime. I don't know why they ever did that, but I guess it was because a lot of people would go to the movies in the summer and they thought, well, hey, why not?
So I know you wanted to mention not all of the great holiday films came from the U.S. We'll take a look at one from England right now. Let's look at a short clip from The Holly and the Ivy.
Siberia, it's like Siberia.
Did you forget we were coming or what?
Nick, dear, how nice to see you. I didn't think you'd be here.
Let me take that.
What are you hanging around here for? I thought you'd be overseas by now.
Maggie, you're not happy, are you?
Who is?
Oh, plenty of people. Perhaps, if they're stupid enough. Why, Mr. always crackle like ice.
Holly? I didn't know it had a smell.
Yes, in the stalks when you break it. You know, it's in the cattle, bitter as any gall.
Mary bore sweet Jesus Christ for to redeem us all.
Why don't you tell the truth?
That's the whole trouble. You can't be told the truth!
One has to admit there is a certain charm and sentimentality in that accent, especially in an older film.
Yes, absolutely. This was based on a play that played on London's West End in the 1949 and 1950 season. And the movie version starred Ralph Richardson as Reverend Martin Gregory. And he wants to spend the Christmas season with his family. And he has an older daughter played by Celia Johnson. You might remember her in Brief Encounter, another British classic. And she lives with her father. She's pretty much a caregiver for him. And, you know, he's rather elderly, but he wants to see his other children too. He's got one son in the military. He's got another daughter who has a high profile job. She lives in London. And two aunts are coming to visit, and also an uncle. And all these people have stories. Some are rather sad. And when you watch the movie, you think, my gosh, is this going to end off happy, or is this going to be a downer? Well, like most movies, there is a Christmas miracle at the end. And The Holly and the Ivy, I discovered this movie 2 years ago through a woman on my real life named Sheila Bryan, who lives in England, and she told me about it, and I saw it, and I just love the film. As a matter of fact, last week, Sue and I watched it again, and I just can't tell you how much we enjoy watching it.
That's a great tip, Lou. And I know there was another film that you really wanted to talk about that isn't what you would normally expect, maybe a little bit darker than we're used to with a lot of Christmas movies these days, called Christmas Holiday. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, if this movie probably has to win an award for the most misleading title ever in film history. Not only that, but the movie stars Deanna Durbin, who was a singing star in the late 30s and 40s. And she pretty much took Universal Pictures out of the red. She was a very popular actress, singer-actress. And her films were always very lighthearted. And her co-star in the film is none other than Gene Kelly. But this movie is not a musical, although Deanna gets to sing 2 songs. She didn't want to sing 2 songs for it. She wanted this just to be a straight drama. But it's a film noir. It's about a young woman. It takes place during Christmas time. It's about a young woman who marries a psychopathic killer, and the killer is Gene Kelly. It's a heck of a movie, and it's directed by the great Robert Siodmak, who specialized in film noir and horror films at the time.
Sounds so different. Let's take a quick look at the trailer for Christmas Holiday.
Whatever made you think you could get away with it?
I love you, Robert.
What are you doing? You mustn't go through my pocket.
Robert, where did you get all that money? You killed him.
A nice holiday smack in the face, but boy, you feel the tension. I love those films. They're just awesome like that. So that's a great selection of films that we don't think of necessarily as holiday season films, but really carry heart and spirit.
Right. Yeah. I mean, another one that I'm very fond of, and I was telling you this before. Everybody remembers the 1948 version of Three Godfathers, which was based on a novel by Peter Kyne with John Wayne and Ward Bond and Pedro Armendáriz and Harry Carey Jr. It's a wonderful movie, but the one we should really, that I love, I like it even better than the later John Ford version, is the 1936 version directed by Richard Boslowski, which starred Chester Morris, Louis Stone, and Walter Brennan as the Three Godfathers. If you ever get a chance to see it, it is a terrific film.
Another great tip, and people are connecting with these, they're liking these, writing them down, and also making some of their own suggestions. I wanted to, and this is not something Lou wanted me to do, but I wanted to go back to see where the very first Christmas movie was, when it was, and maybe get a little bit of the flavor of it, we have to go back to 1898. And Lou, let's take a look at this together because it's so different. It's almost before you were born, 1898. This is unbelievable. It was made in Britain, called Santa Claus, and it was considered a visual and conceptual marvel at the time, made by a guy named George Albert Smith. And I guess a lot of people who were making films, you didn't do it full time. This guy was a hypnotist, psychic, and magician. And reading about him, Lou, they credit him with helping to pioneer film editing and the use of close-ups.
Not only that, but the color. I mean, obviously, this was painted frame by frame. I would think that's how they did that.
That's amazing to see that from 1898, probably the first ever Christmas film. The next one that came out that was significant came out 1 year later. We always think early films like that, you think of Georges Méliès and Trip to the Moon, because that's always in every documentary you see. But take a look at this one. This is called A Christmas Dream from 1900, also by Georges Méliès. And isn't it interesting, when they shot films then, the camera was locked down and it was almost like you were watching a stage play.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was like that a lot in the early talkie period too, before the use of boom microphones, where they would just, lock the camera on a tripod and just.
Did you see that there, Lou, where the one character lost his shoe, and it's all the rest of this scene, they're all dancing around his shoe in the middle of the.
No room for retakes here.
No retakes. Now watch, he's going to come back out in a second. He's going to pick it up and walk off, which I guess was the golden age of filmmaking, 1900. Then I started thinking, Lou, there have been so many versions of Dickens' A Christmas Carol. How far back does the original go? And we found one from 1901 called Scrooge, made by a guy named Walter Booth. A very interesting, terrifying special effects. They'll have Bob Marley's face superimposed over the door coming up here in a second, which really terrified movie audiences with double exposures and things like that people had never seen before.
Yeah, it's amazing how innovative these early filmmakers really were. And, Méliès, and, it's just amazing. Look at that.
He's looking back here at Christmas Past, right? Seeing his life from an earlier time, and you can only imagine what it would have been like. Maybe never to have even seen a movie before in 1901 and to watch this magic happening. And that's why I wanted to ask you, Lou, to help us start to sort of wrap up a little bit. What is the magic? What is the magic that these holiday movies had then and still have for us today?
I think that they put us into a world where there's hope, where into a almost like a fairy tale type of world. And I don't know, it's just almost a comforting feeling when you watch these old Christmas classics. It's what we want our Christmas to be like.
And you're a history person. You don't have to be to enjoy movies, but just to look at the backgrounds and to see what was the set like, what does the kitchen look like behind the actors in the scene that's going on, it really is a window to an existence that isn't there anymore, that's very different from ours. And it's just very cathartic to let your mind be taken away by some of these wonderful stories and really complex plots that many of these films that you've suggested to us today have.
Yeah, I mean, I love becoming immersed into these movies. It's sheer escapism, and I mean, we're going through some troubled times right now, and I'm sure that this will be short-lived. Through these movies, they help us get through it, and I really urge people to watch some of these Christmas movies. There are many others, like, Holiday Affair, Miracle on 34th Street, The Miracle in Morgan's Creek, which I mentioned before, so many other ones. There are lesser known movies like Are You Listening? I don't know. We could go on and on. Christmas in Connecticut is another one that's very close to my heart, being that I'm from Connecticut.
A great movie too. And the other thing, that this is a very magical time, because these days we have access to films that we could never have seen before. I grew up being very interested in Laurel and Hardy, but the only time you could ever find a film is when the local station was running one at 2 a.m. and you would stay up to watch it. But these days, many streaming services and places make them available, so you really can watch almost anything you want.
Well, you know what? I liked it better years ago when you were so anxious to see these, because when you finally got the chance to see them, they seemed even more special. But now, because everything is so accessible to people, it just makes me feel like, it doesn't seem as special. Like, for instance, I was speaking to a young woman last year, and she watched that movie Stan and Ollie that came out. It was about Laurel and Hardy. And I asked her, I said, so have you seen many Laurel and Hardy films? She said, well, I got interested in them after I watched this new movie that came out, and I've seen all their movies. And I said, you've seen all their films? She said, yeah. And she saw them all within a matter of 3 months, whereas it took me almost a lifetime to see them all. So it doesn't seem as special to the younger people, I don't think.
Yeah, it's such a great point, because especially for parents with kids, it's a different experience watching older movies. I mean, I think what happens is we get used to thinking, you go to a theater, you're in a movie, and really in moments you're bombarded with like car crashes, explosions, shootings, action, nonstop, where these films unfold a little bit more than what we're used to as theater goers.
The characterization and the writing back then was far better than it is today, for the most part, I would say.
And better meaning interesting, not old-fashioned, not something but you'll be surprised when you watch these films how much you enjoy them and how much you're into these stories.
Yeah, I only wish that younger people would just give these movies a chance. Give it about 10 or 15 minutes, and then they will be hooked and they will want to see more. That's what happened to me as a kid.
Same goes with Laurel and Hardy. They seem like they're slow at first and so different than today, but you watch and you'll be pulled in. And every week on Growing Boulder's What's Next, we always like to leave people with a meme, something to think about as they go through. And to this week's, it comes from Stan Laurel, who in the movie Bratz very famously said, "You can lead a horse to water, but a pencil must be lead." And a lot of memes are in the eye of the beholder. Boy, they had lots of great quotes like that, didn't they?
Yes, they certainly did.
They certainly did.
They certainly did.
Well, it's a great walk down memory lane, Lou. And there's so many. I think the whole point of what we're talking about today is to, while we do have more time at home, and until the movie industry does find a way to get back on its feet, whether it's through streaming or whether we go back to theaters, there's so many gems. There's so many just wonderful moments waiting to be discovered, don't you think?
Absolutely, absolutely. And if anybody wants to join, if you're on Facebook, you could join My Real Life. I will admit you. You could even send me a private message, Lou Sabini, L-O-U, and last name is S-A-B-I-N-I, and I will admit you into our group.
Lou, thank you for your insights and your inspiration.
Well, and have a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to you and your family.
Great. Thanks so much, Lou. So folks, I sure hope you'd enjoy taking this look back. There are so many gems out there. There's so many little bits of magic, and it's not just appreciating them for what they were, but it's taking a moment or taking the time in your plans and what you do to maybe gather the family together and sit down and do something a little bit different. Take a look at something from days gone by. Talk about it. See what you enjoy. See what you think the differences are. Because the more things bring us together, the better we all are. That's kind of a Growing Bolder philosophy, and I think that's one that can be achieved by taking the time as a family to sit back and take a look at some of these films from days gone by. In fact, I hope your life is just like a great holiday movie full of sentimentality and joy and happiness as well. And whether you're watching something from 1898 or whether you're watching the Hallmark Channel, have a fantastic holiday season, and we will catch you right back here very, very soon on Growing Boulder's What's Next.
Growing